My name is Jari Bolander. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Ethos podcast. On this podcast, we're going to take a deep dive into the traits, values, beliefs, and skills of all sorts of entrepreneurs to learn how to build a more ethical, inclusive, and resilient world. Let's get started.
Charlie Meaden, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. I just got lost listening to your podcast about 10 minutes ago. Almost forgot about recording this one.
Wow. I'm honored, and
yeah.
That's an honor. Thank you so much. You are the founder of Gembot.ai, an AI investing assistant and modern wealth platform, which of course everyone is, into the AI thing. I always like to say most people, the only AI is in the name, but I've looked at your stuff and I think it's really kind of cool, interesting. I'm fascinated by this in so many different ways. So I'm so excited to talk with you about this. But before we get into all that, I'd love to hear how you got to do all this stuff that you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends how far you go back, because obviously all the previous experiences I've had have obviously led me to be here where I am, specifically in New Zealand, originally from the UK. So a decade ago, my wife and I emigrated here the day after we got married. And I think we've been back once or twice, have 3 kids here and a dog who's behind me who may bark during this episode.
We're dog friendly here on the show.
Oh, that's good.
I love dogs.
Yeah. But yeah, I originally trained as a goldsmith while playing gaming and esports professionally, really in the early days of esports. Was super interested in technology and gaming specifically, very, very passionate about it, and used the jewelry and the goldsmithing to kind of earn a living and actually then retrain into programming. So kind of got here to New Zealand, got established, I built my own sole tradership for the goldsmithing, and I was able to work a couple days a week and then have 7 other days to then get into technology, which led me to helping a recycling startup that was operating in Arkansas. And I helped them build the first couple of MVP products for their recycling gamification platforms. And that then led me to build what I really wanted to do, which was Uproar at the time, which was basically an esports platform and air miles for video gaming kind of website and reward platform where you could earn kind of headsets, keyboards, stuff like that. And we grew that to about 450,000 users, struggled to monetize it ultimately, and didn't have a strong enough kind of leverage with the actual developers themselves, because they would want to build everything. They would want to often bring things internally unless you could offer them something really substantial. I think we thought our customers were the gamers, but they were probably actually the game developers. Anyway, so we found a path to getting acqui-hired because that entity was going to be able to bring the sales for us and kind of pivot the business to be a bit more B2B. And then through that experience, I had some capital and I wanted to start getting into investing, but didn't have enough capital to do angel investing well. So I then spent, the better part of 3 years reading as many books as I could, coming up with my own mental model on how I wanted to allocate capital in the public markets, and then utilizing, my manufacturing background in jewelry to create kind of systems for investing, and then my programming skills to then automate as much as I could. And I kind of came up with the idea that I wanted to get venture level returns in the public markets. That was my objective. So 2019, officially started trading it with like the systems we built, backtesting system and the kind of system to create the trades. And we've been trading that since 2019. And as a part of that, we then thought it would be awesome if other people could basically execute and manage their investing. And we came up with we had lots of issues with the strategy. We're like, we have 4 different brokerage accounts and they're not all connected. And like, we actually want to have a reconciled whole view of our book. And, we came up, journaling our trades is quite important so that we can kind of get a reconciliation of how to do things. And then obviously we want to be able to have a logic behind buying and selling our different equities and such. And that's where we've been thinking about and trying to build Gembot to help people essentially manage and execute the wealth. We hear a lot that people are like, well, if only I stuck to my strategy, if only I actually executed on my idea. It's kind of that that FOMO kind of side of things that often kind of finds its way into investing, but we kind of want to build a platform where you're there for the long haul. So it's not a get rich quick platform, it's a get rich slow platform. And over time, what we want to do is educate people and get them more financially literate, because really how you build wealth in our view from this kind of thing is 3 ways. You cut your expenses. So how do we help people cut their expenses? You learn and become financially literate, and you invest regularly and contribute regularly. Those 3 things combined will, be the difference between, 27% plus at the end when you retire. So that's kind of our objective.
Wow.
Our internal benchmark is that if people use our platform, for their investing life cycle, they'll retire with 27% more.
Wow.
And that's not by performance necessarily. That's by also that's just by extra contributions.
Yeah.
So we're not saying we can necessarily help you outperform, although people that use our generative AI and our automation, they may generate alpha, but we're not, we're just providing a tool set. But by helping people save more, that's where we can help people ultimately retire with more.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it was Albert Einstein that said something about the power of compounding is like
the eighth wonder of
the world. Yeah. Because
that's on our website. We've got a compounding calculator.
Oh, okay.
And we use that quote on our website from Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
It is. It's magic almost. It's like, how could this be?
Well, but then, it's in theory, right? The theoretical kind of components of linear compounding, right? When it's predictable, but markets, and that's the other thing that's a part of this, is markets and investing is not linear.
No, not at all.
If you extrapolate out long enough, okay, it looks a little bit linear, but it's not. Things change, dynamics change, and that's where, financial literacy and the generative AI can help you like understand what's going on by looking at history and researching history and kind of coming up with some understandings of what happens when there's money devaluation, or, what were the dynamics like in past periods that are similar to this. If I describe what the current environment is to our generative AI, can it give me some examples in history that kind of played out? And then, you might be able to find trades. I was doing a couple of experiments with it the other day where I was looking at history of when oil does well and gold does poorly. I'm interested by the concept of that trade at the moment. I probably will never place it, but I'm just interested by that dynamic of when, you're heading into a recession, but you've also got these weird inflationary and geopolitical kind of tensions, and how gold is very, 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 very good until you get into like actually a recession. And then usually everyone has to sell the gold to cover everything else. So usually gold gets destroyed like after these inflationary periods, because people have to kind of rotate, and, there's stimulus and printing of money, and then, gold kind of doesn't perform as well. But yeah, using the generative AI to like kind of find out, even if it's just a generic term or something quite complex. So it's not like a Netflix subscription where you get one thing. It's like, I get a Nissan Leaf and you get a Lamborghini, perhaps.
Exactly. Well, I think it's like anything. In order to use the tools effectively, you have to actually learn what it means. I think I've been finding this more and more as I talk with people about generative AI in general, as well as how it's going to affect people's working. They have this whole thing about, the white collar class is going to go away because generative AI is going to take their jobs. And I just say, well, someone's got to drive the boat. I don't get it. I don't believe it. I think it's another tool that you have to really understand the inputs and outputs. And to your point about, learning and literacy in the financial space, I think that's a really important aspect of this, is you could lose a lot of money really quick if you don't know what you're doing. And, some people
That's right. And it depends what your intentions are, right? Like, what are your actual goals? Why are you doing this? If you're trying to build your wealth, why? There's got to be a why, so that you can then, get through the long term, right? Something you said there kind of got me going, and then I kind of missed it. Damn it. But there was a really good thread in there where you were talking about, what was it? You were talking about
white collar.
White collar, yes.
Yeah.
That's it. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
White collar, I made this tweet the other day, it was a while ago, probably a couple of months ago. I said, if you're not building equity, you're going unemployed. And it's not that the entire white collar profession will change. It's just that productivity, now taking a completely different step. One of the best things I think I've done in terms of my work life is I wrote this memo in 2021 called How to Fight Inflation in a Deflationary World. And it talked about how, what do you do when you've got all these inflationary pressures because of all this money that was printed and all these supply chain issues and all this debt that's been created, with a world where there's automation and AI creating tons of deflation. So it's quite an interesting kind of dynamic we've got right now, where you've got pressures of deflation through automation and productivity gains. Our team is a small team of 6, but if we all utilize automation systems and AI, we are potentially 12 people, and, ultimately with Genbot.ai, it's kind of like, how do we create, it so that our customers essentially have like a wealth management team in their pocket?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, good point. I mean, I was actually at a hardware meetup last night, and I live in San Francisco, and they have these hardware startups all the time, and whatever meetups. And it was funny because one of the people that were there were showing a tool to design PCBs, the things in electronics. And it was web-based. And everyone like was like, ooh, ah. And I'm thinking, wow, like I remember when I was an engineer and we would design PCBs, this is, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, we used to use a PC to do it. And the guy was saying the exact same things, like, well, you remember, you just have the PC in the corner, that's the thing, and they're archaic and you can't, I'm just sitting there going, oh, wow. Like, and he of course had AI to help with the parts and the routing and like all the things that were like such a pain. I mean, I remember this like it was yesterday, how painful it was, to like match the impedance of a line. You had to like calculate it with your by hand. And this guy's like, yeah, it just does it automatically. You're like,
yeah,
it's 2023, and this is clearly, like, to your point, the productivity gains on just something like that, and amongst other things, is phenomenal. And I just wonder if, as that happens, that just the level, like, there's just going to be a new standard. Like, to your point, you're either investing or going to go out of business. I mean, you're going to have to keep up. I think. I don't know. I mean,
well, you kind of are being forced more to have some ownership of something, right? And obviously there's been more of a kind of push towards own nothing, right? Which kind of, I get the kind of concept, but at the same time now with AI, if you don't have equity, you don't have kind of guarantee of like income essentially, or like, like in the future, potentially. I don't, this is the first time at least when I've been in kind of industry where I don't really know the outcome. Like I can't see the outcome clearly, even though it doesn't mean I'm right when I have these like thoughts about what the future will look like. Like I kind of can't forecast ahead. I don't have the computational wherewithal to do it. That's where I need AI. And that's where I like, my Twitter handle is Cyborg Charlie. And I think we're all cyborgs now. So
yeah, I mean, it's the point.
Yeah. Like we've got these phones, right? That tell us everything that we need.
Yeah.
The cyborgs.
Yeah. I mean, what this reminds me of is back when the personal computer and the internet was just starting to get going. Because I remember I was at a semiconductor company building chips for the internet, like literally like for routers and stuff like that. And it was just this, I mean, you just couldn't keep up with it. It's like building the infrastructure for the internet back in, late 90s or early 2000s, where, it's unheard of, like college, like, oh, I have email. Like, I was email on a terminal at the college, right? And to where we are today, which is not, 25, almost 30 years later, it's insane. And
well, what does that, right? I was just going to say, what does that do to like information transfer?
Yeah.
What that's done.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, that's why markets and, financial instruments are moving so much faster now, because the amount of nodes in the system, is just kind of growing and growing and growing. It's insane. And every new agent you increase into the system now is a new node that has some level of randomness, statistical randomness. I mean, that's it. LLMs, right? It's random in a sense. It's not random, but it's random. So each new agent that acts in the environment is technically like another human in a sense, because it's just another node.
Yeah.
Now, it might have consistent views about certain things. So these collective number of nodes are obviously going to have relatively similar responses to stuff, but it is just another kind of point of information that's going to dictate markets specifically.
Agreed. You know, it's like just, it could be consistent yet random because it's random within the sphere that it's playing in. So you may not be able to 100% predict it, but it'll probably be within this realm. And even that, there's some probability. I mean, that's
well, there's always an opportunity for a tail risk then.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Very common to see all that throughout history.
Yeah.
Like, how did
you've
that
seen it time
happen?
and time again.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Time and time again.
Yeah.
And you know, you've got Nassim Taleb's like the Black Swan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's another Michelle Walker, I think is her name. And she did the Grey Rhino, which was kind of like the Black Swan, but she was kind of arguing that, nah, they're not black swans. Like, they're grey rhinos. They're stampeding towards you. It's just that you can't be bothered to look.
Well,
and that's so true.
Well, it is interesting. Yeah, no, I think people just get frozen. It's like the fight, flight, or freeze, and they just freeze. And oh my God, we don't know how to get out of the way of the charging rhino.
Yeah. And actually, you can know that it's charging, and you can still end up getting stampeded just because knowing is only one part of it. You know, then executing correctly is a whole different ballgame. And that's hopefully what we can kind of help people solve for over the long term and kind of, utilize AI, work with AI. What's the augmentation? Because we probably have different lines of where we want automation and AI also to kind of dictate our decision making and our, financial well-being, or whether it be, our emails or whatever it is. We probably have a different kind of line that we want to kind of augment. My augmentations will be different from yours. We might also have different preferences of models that we want to use. I align and resonate with the Bard model, you with the GPT model. It becomes a bit dystopian.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things from an ethical, moral, compass type thing that have to be worked out. And I hope. Well, I'm always optimistic about these things because I generally am a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist. And I do think that things get worked themselves out because it's in everyone's best interest in the long run to have them work out, because there's just innate in our kind of being that kind of propensity. And I don't know, I feel that, we're at the Wild West right now, and just learn as much as you can, stay ahead of it, and make sure that you're, really being thoughtful about it. But
well, it's a gold rush.
Well, yeah, I was going to get back to this whole idea of your goldsmithing. I've never met many goldsmiths. What is that? What does that mean? I mean, I can imagine, but tell me a little bit.
I made like engagement rings and necklaces, and also manufactured like fashion jewelry. So silver kind of rings and pendants and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, mainly fine jewelry. So yeah, like kind of diamond engagement rings, tennis bracelets, stuff like that. But then got into the manufacturing space because it was very lucrative. Yeah. There was like no cost and you were getting paid a lot. And if you created a good system, you could do 5x what someone else is doing in a day.
Oh, wow.
So if you get efficient, you can go and do 2 days of work and then not work for, even a month.
Oh, wow. So someone would would it be an individual client or a store?
Yeah, it would be a brand. So they'd basically be like, okay, I want 500 of these finished, because they would give you the kind of half finished product, and then they'd charge you I would charge them maybe $12 each. And if I could get that down to 3 minutes each one, it's pretty good.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know much about that. I have a friend that does sustainable jewelry. It's like a 3D printed and
3D printed and then probably lab grown diamonds and stuff.
Yeah. I don't know about the diamond part.
We do lab grown. We used to, I don't do it now, but we got into lab grown diamonds as well. Yeah, which is kind of more sustainable, of course.
Yeah.
And then, knowing obviously where things come from, there are some pretty good circular economies that have thrived because they're mining tanzanite or whatever it is, then there are obviously bad outcomes too. So
yes. Yeah. Interesting. So mean, what are some of the kind of lessons that you've learned so far after kind of jumping into this? I mean, obviously entrepreneurial with the goldsmithing business and, trying to make efficiencies. I mean, I used to be in manufacturing, so I can really appreciate that. It's easy to make one thing. It's hard to make a million things. And there's an art to that.
Yeah. It's quite a
Um,
fun.
it's
Yeah.
fun. No, I mean, I used to love tweaking little things to make it a little more efficient, a little more yield. But what are some of the things you kind of learned along the way that have, you think, even from goldsmithing or what you've brought to Gempot?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of what I learned from esports and gaming originally was how to lead and how to make decisions with incomplete information with other, kind of highly volatile decision makers in the game, right? Because if it's 5v5, that's a lot of decisions being made, a lot of incomplete information to deal with. And then if you're playing at a high level, communicating amongst each other is also kind of a skill that really has helped me, and more around kind of being comfortable making decisions. And then I read a book once called Thinking in Bets, which is very good. It's by a female professional poker player. And it was all about detaching the outcome from the decision. So based on the information I had at that time, when I made that decision, like, am I happy with that? And if I'm happy with that, then the outcome doesn't necessarily define me. And I think it's when you're kind of making decisions, you want to have that you want to be focused more on, am I making the best decision with the information I have, rather than, oh no, I hope the outcome is this, because the outcome may not be what you desire. And I think from that perspective, from an entrepreneurial perspective, which leading to decisions is try and make as least decisions as possible, because you don't want decision fatigue. Every decision you make basically deteriorates the next decision to a certain degree if you're forced to make them over and over and over again, or it can do, depending. Investors have to deal with that, where they might be making lots of decisions and trades and kind of managing their money. And if they're forced into making many, many decisions, they've got, it's like poker as well. Like, if you're in every single hand and you're paying to be in every single hand, then the statistics aren't on your side, really. So that's kind of a couple of kind of threads there, a bit of rambling, but a few threads around kind of, trying to focus on making good decisions, and then actually trying to make as few decisions as possible, because we make 1,000 decisions a day, but only one really matters, like we're forced to make all these micro decisions, but it's like a few defining decisions that are going to really be the game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, the decision fatigue, I agree, is real, and trying to minimize at least the trivial ones so you can focus on the more important ones, I do think helps significantly with the thought process. And I think it's not that, it's the cognitive overload I've found, especially when you're running a company and you're starting things up and you're it seems like there's so many decisions to make, because everything's all new, and why do I do this? What do I do that? And it's really just, set the stage, foundationally, this is our direction, and then go that way and stop second guessing. Do we do this? Do we do Python? Whatever it is, you always get people always ruminate on, oh, this font, this, and you just doesn't matter. Just go that way, go that way. So,
that's kind of the sense of, that's my kind of feeling on, kind of the entrepreneurial journey is you're forced into a lot of decisions. So you have to be okay with making decisions, and you probably have to be okay with refusing to make decisions.
Yeah. Do we really need to make this decision right now? Yeah. It's a good one. So what you playing any games right now? Do you still game, or is it?
I play with my son. Yeah. So
Okay.
we play a bit of Fortnite together, and it's good because, I've still got it, but
You still can't beat the old man yet?
he's so much better at, there's two components to Fortnite, which is the building and the shooting. And the building, he is just so much better than me at.
Oh.
But the shooting and the kind of strategy behind sometimes staying alive, I've kind of still got that edge, at least for now. But I mean, we 1v1, and if we 1v1, if it's a building focused 1v1, he'll beat me, and he's 8. So,
oh, cool.
But he's incredible though. He's very good.
Cool.
He probably shouldn't play so much.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting because, to your point about, thinking in bets and the gaming construct, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that, I'm not a big gamer. I don't typically game, but I can appreciate game theory, and I can appreciate that from sports analogies, right? You win some, you
similar
lose
to
some.
sport.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to get at. It's like in sports, like games or any kind of game that's, competitive, you win some, you lose some, and you just have to be okay with that. You're never going to win everything. And the entrepreneurs that understand that it's not about winning every time, it's about getting to the goal, and it's about learning from the loss or whatever. It's like so powerful. And I see so many young entrepreneurs come from, they've never lost before, quote unquote. And this is such a tough job, and it's such a tough thing to do. I mean, you're creating something from nothing. That's going to be hard. And
no, I totally resonate with that. And, the gaming thing was a good start for me around that. But because, I play with my son a bit now when I can, but I got into jiu-jitsu when I was in San Francisco. Actually, I started jiu-jitsu back in 2018. But I train every day. I'm a purple belt, and I have a really good team that I train with, and they're very, very good. And I trained in Oakland at 10th Planet Oakland. I trained at San Francisco Jiu-Jitsu, which used to be 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu as well. And then I trained here as well in New Zealand. And that for me is great, because that is the entrepreneurial journey, is like having some guy that's 50 kilos or whatever, 50, 60 pounds heavier than you, like controlling you and, basically beating you up and making you want to quit. And, you have to get comfortable with that, because like you say, a lot of it's a bit of a suck.
Yeah. Well, I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, nice. Cool. Where do you train in San Francisco?
Bay Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay, cool.
Big combat sports in Japantown. Yeah, I found the same thing. The humbleness. I mean, I'm a big guy too. I mean, I'm over 100 kilos. Yeah. I think, probably around 100 kilos, right? So 220 pounds. And I'm a big guy. I used that at my advantage when I can. I'm a pressure passer more than anything. But there's so many levels to the game, like any game.
It's a game theory thing.
Yeah, it is. And then the rules of the game, and then your strategy. And I've just been humbled so many times and learned so much about just, gosh, this is a bad day. I just have to have, this is a bad day. Okay. Hopefully I have a better day tomorrow. And it's funny because I started jiu-jitsu, after my wife died. My wife, Jane, died of leukemia. And I did it to like feel something, like to kind of like have some physicality and some, no one knew who I was. And it was just like, who's this guy shows up. Right. And what I found, it's the, we roll, right? You got to roll with it. And so
nothing else matters while
you're
there. That's the beauty of it. And that's the beauty. That's what you need if you want to last in this game, you need to be able to stay alive. Right. And that's like the Naval podcast, how to get rich without getting lucky. Mm-hmm. One of the things, one of his things is like, never get out of the game. So never lose, which means basically never go broke. Try to never lose everything. Right. And a part of, being able to kind of stay with the kind of mental pressure of everything is, where do you go where that doesn't matter for an hour and you can regenerate? And for me, that's jiu-jitsu, and that was surfing a bit, but I just don't like the water. I don't trust it.
Well, it's there to kill you. It's there to kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
No mistake about it. It's been there for millions and millions of years. Its job's to kill you. We used to surf a lot, not a lot, but used to surf and like go in the ocean a lot. It's like, no, it's legit. You cannot think of anything else when you're in. And
that's the same with jiu-jitsu too. Even though the consequences aren't as bad, but they can be.
Yeah.
It is still a combat sport, but it's a combat sport at least where you don't take brain trauma too much.
Blows to the head. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the reason why it just it appeals to me so much. I mean, I don't know any other martial art where you can go hard. Like, I mean, literally almost full out and not, I mean, you could do a leg lock or you could get a arm bar.
I mean, I've got a herniated disc in my neck right now. So like you can get injuries and they suck, but like you say, it's usually pretty good. And if you've got good training partners, usually nothing happens. that's the thing, is it's who you surround yourself with. And that's another great thing about the jiu-jitsu community specifically, is obviously the people are so humble and so kind of ego less.
Yeah. I found that anyone that I've rolled with or whatever, of course there's always exceptions, but just so calmer, like the kind of the way they just hold themselves. It's like, they know that, that was a good roll, or that was a good, take or whatever. And then it's like on to the next one. So it's actually a really good metaphor for entrepreneurship in my mind. I just think it's this constant learning, and you just can't, it's interesting because you must remain vigilant. You just can't rest on your laurels. There's always someone better. And you just have to be extremely, you have to be humble, and you got to be hungry for it. You got to be a team player, even though it's an individual sport. You have a partner you're rolling with, you have to sense that. I remember, I was at the gym the other day. I was rolling with, she was like 16, right? Like she was like, hey, she's doing a tournament, coming up in the tournament. And she's like, hey, I'd love to roll with you, even though, like, I am literally probably 100 pounds heavier than she is.
Yeah. And
I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, and so clearly I could crush her. This is, but the whole art of it is, okay, well, look, I'm helping you train. So and what's helping me train is not using my physicality. Like, how do I do this with just pure technique, And as we were,
you'll learn, learn things from basically seeing what someone with a different body type does. Yeah. And then you can actually implement that, because it wasn't going to come natural to you, but you kind of learned it from seeing it and feeling it. And that's kind of another thing about, for me, for investing specifically, it was important for our strategy not to encompass just one discipline. I think being willing to kind of go and eat with different cultures and see how they do things and get wisdom and inspiration from other people and what they do is obviously a critical thing. And that's very consistent with obviously the jiu-jitsu way, and specifically training with different body types. But also, of course, there is no jiu-jitsu player undefeated, and they have absolute weight divisions, not because the heavyweight obviously would usually win maybe 8 out of 10, but it's those two that they don't, because it is a game theory game. And you can have like Kyra from the Bay Area, one of the greatest of all times, and he's like probably 125 pounds.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a bit more. He's probably competes at that, but is probably about 140 or something. But has trained some amazing heavyweights as well that are world champions. So it's an interesting one. But that's an interesting one I hear from black belts as well, that are smaller guys that then do have to train. When new people come in, they're a specific energy, and you as a black belt, even if you're kind of smaller, you still can, easily out kind of jujitsu someone much larger than you, but it's a bit of a pain. Yeah. What I've heard from them. Yeah. And I think the risk about being a bit smaller in jujitsu is that you end up injured if you don't train wisely. Yeah. But that goes for everyone as well, right? So, specifically, I would say for the smaller body types, there is no, I know world champions that I train with that are smaller, and I train with everyone, but he doesn't. He won't train with anyone more than kind of 20 pounds heavier than him. He's like, what's the point? That's not helping, because he's doing it for a different reason, right? I'm doing it for the art and the experience in a sense. I mean, I still compete, but he's trying to do this as his job. Yeah. And given that he's doing it for his job, he just won't deviate out of the body type that he knows he has to compete against, which I found quite interesting and a different mindset.
Well, I mean, he's playing a different game, to your point. Yeah. And that's the thing I think that always fascinates me about martial arts and game theory, and again, just games in general, is, where the gym I go to, Bay Combat, it's kind of multimodal. So that's jujitsu, it's sambo, they do a little judo, they do a little, all these sort of things. And the philosophy is not that one is better. It's just, they're just different games you're playing. So if you're doing sambo, that's a different game than judo. That's a different game than jujitsu, or wrestling or whatever. And what I find really fascinating about that is the rules of the game matter if you're competing, right? There's, IBJJF rules. There's all these other different rules, right?
It's like heel hooking when you're in the gi.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, okay. And so what I find fascinating about the different games is that yeah, they players in those games optimize for the rules. And the other thing is, one of my friends, that I train with, Scott, he's always saying that the highest level games are played at the margins. So they're always this like pushing on the rule, right? And I always find this fascinating because, there is no one martial art that's perfect for everything, right? That you have to have this open mind that, oh, I'm going to use some stuff from
Well,
judo.
there's MMA.
Yeah, there is MMA. That's true.
And I would probably, you'd probably go ahead and say, okay, MMA is probably the perfect one because it encompasses a well-rounded MMA fighter, encompasses all of those, So maybe MMA is almost the perfect martial art because it's all of them.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually really good.
That's a good look at MMA now compared to where it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Like
everyone's world-class everywhere,
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna, jiu-jitsu guy, like jiu-jitsu guys especially have struggled notoriously in MMA in recent history to take people down.
Yeah.
And control them.
Yeah.
So maybe MMA is the perfect martial art.
Certainly close. I mean,
which tells you a lot, right? It's about mixed, right?
Yeah.
It's about kind of going and learning from different areas. And I'm big fan of that, advocate for that, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I remember reading with I think it was on Instagram or something, where they're saying, UFC champions are, all some type, or proves that jiu-jitsu is the best for UFC champions. And then the graph was like, actually, no, it's wrestlers, all really good wrestlers.
Wrestlers wrestlers have the best. I think from, I don't know if that actually works. I was thinking of making a betting model to see if, like, statistically, if you just bet on wrestlers every time, you would, you would kind of, that would be profitable. I never back tested it or anything, but, it seems to me like, wrestlers seem to have the best kind of lineage of champions.
It does seem that way. Well, Charlie, appreciate the time, man. Such a great conversation. Super interesting what you're doing. I just love the whole, learn from everyone kind of multimodal thing that you're doing that. And so cool that you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner. So cool. And thanks for being on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate the time. Had a blast talking about all the things I'm passionate about. So it's been a great, 40 odd minutes.
Cool. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Entrepreneur Ethos podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did creating it. My hope is that you learned something that can make you a little bit better. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do share it with friends and review it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also join my email list by visiting theentrepreneurethos.com to get my thoughts on what I'm doing to get better, as well as what I'm working on. You can also pick up my book, The Entrepreneur Ethos, if you want to learn the traits, values, and beliefs that I think we need to build a more ethical, inclusive, and resilient entrepreneur and, frankly, world community. Feel free to follow me on Twitter @TheDailyMBA and let me know if you have any questions or recommendations for a guest you'd like me to talk to. Also, drop me a note if you try anything we talked about on this or any other episode. I'd love to hear what's working for you. Until next time, keep getting better.